So if you've been following AI calling for the past couple of weeks, you've probably stumbled upon something called the new Realtime API update by OpenAI, and you've probably had a bunch of questions related to this new update. Like, what does this mean for the other AI voice calling platforms? Should you even be using those right now, or should you move your entire business over to Realtime API? How well does Realtime API work? What's the difference? So in this video, I'll be answering all of those questions and much more, and I'll be ending the video on exactly should you implement this for yourself if you're an agency or a business owner. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. So a quick reminder that if you get any type of value or learn something new from this video and you don't want to miss out on all of the most recent AI updates and news, then feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel down below, hit the bell for post notifications, and let's get right into it. So essentially breaking down the difference between speech to text and the new speech to speech, essentially with the Realtime API update. So how it used to work and how it still works with voice communication platforms is that you have a caller. They say, example, I want to book an appointment for tomorrow at 12 p.m. Now there's a bunch of things that actually go into the back end before the person actually gets a response. So number one is it goes through the voice communication platform. So in our case, we use a bunch of SimFlow. We use a VAPI as well from time to time. It's a bit more complex. So if you're more of a beginner, use SimFlow. And then it goes into a voice AI orchestration layer. So you get the user input of the actual caller. So they say, I want to book an appointment for tomorrow at 12 p.m. That's the user input. And then you actually have a speech to text, which converts the caller speech to actual text to be sent to the LLM, so language model layer, which is also referred to as the brain. Okay, it's what actually analyzes what you say. So for the speech to text converter, it's typically Whisper that's being used. There's a couple of different other platforms, and this is not something you're actively going to see, but that is integrated into the voice communication platforms. Okay, so these essentially make it easier for you to actually use AI voice, AI calling, without having to set up all of this backend. So you'll never actually see this, but you have the speech to text, which converts it. You have the LLM layer, which is essentially OpenAI. Okay, it's the best one at the moment. And then, and only then, does it answer with text. So you speak with speech, it gets converted to text, sent to ChatGPT, just as you would when you log in and use ChatGPT as normal. It then converts the text that ChatGPT answers with to speech by example 11 Labs. Okay, so an AI voice software. And then you actually have the output of the AI that goes back to the caller. So you can see that there's a bunch of things happening in the back end, which the inefficiencies that happen with this AI calling. And by the way, if you just get SimFlow or VAPI without the right prompting, this part, if you don't prompt it correctly, is actually, it's really, really inefficient. Okay, why? Because it becomes insanely slow compared to human interactions. Okay, so if you don't prompt it correctly, which is the problem with 99% of agencies and just businesses in general, is they buy SimFlow, they buy VAPI or any type of voice communication software, and then they wonder why it doesn't work, because you have to prompt it correctly in order for this process to be as efficient as possible, so that when someone says that they want to book an appointment, this process happens as fast as possible, okay, and with the least friction and bugs, okay, or as least as possible. And just a side note that this is still better than human calling. Okay, if you have human setters, a secretary, it's way worse than this. Okay, so that's a little caveat is I covered in previous videos. If you want to check them out, check out the channel. But in previous videos, I actually covered why AI calling is much superior than human calling, even with these inefficiencies that I'm about to cover, because of speed to lead, volume, all that stuff. Okay, but the actual inefficiencies currently with AI voice calling softwares, is that they're still pretty slow compared to human interaction. So there's a bit of latency. Once again, it can be reduced with some proper prompting, but it still has to go through all of those previous processes. Okay, so it is still going to take more time than if you say we're speaking with a human. They can analyze and respond right away. But the biggest thing, and this is often something that many people don't mention, is the loss of empathy, emotions, and accents. Because when the person speaks, if they're happy, if they're angry, if they're excited, well, that gets converted to text. It's like someone texting you, right? You won't be able to discern, or you'll have more difficulty of discerning how, like, in which tonality they actually spoke. So you won't be able to answer with speech to that text with a similar tonality, right? So because of that speech to text, and then it just answers with text and activates a microphone, there's a lot of loss of emotions and accents and tonality that happens, making the call obviously less realistic, right? Now that obviously can be customized in a software like 11 Labs of at least getting a more human-like voice, but it is still something that happens, okay? There's also a bunch of reliability issues due to multiple integrations. So there's a bunch of different softwares. You know, you have the voice communication platform, you have the speech to text converter, you have the LLM, then you have the text to speech converter. So, and then it goes back out through the voice communication platform. So there's a bunch of moving parts. So even if one of these softwares is experiencing like a revamp or an update or anything, it will affect the efficiency of the whole system, right? And because there's multiple of them, it may affect it pretty often, right? It does have complex billing because every single one of these parts cost money, okay? I hop on calls with a bunch of business owners. These cost money, okay? 11 Labs, Whisper, OpenAI even is not free, okay? When you use AI calling, there are recurring costs, okay? So it shouldn't come to you as a surprise. It's cool though that when you work with a voice communication platform, oftentimes when you pay their monthly fee, they include all of the other parts like OpenAI, Whisper, and 11 Labs. They include all of those in their essentially a monthly software package. Okay, and because there's actually a conversion happening, and this is something you've maybe experienced yourself on a demo call with an AI, but it kind of can't really handle interruptions as well. Okay, so in the sense of if someone stops talking even for a second or two and then restarts talking, well, it's tough for the AI to actually realize that the person just took a pause. So then what will actually happen is the AI interrupts the individual, and that, depending once again on how you're prompting the AI, can be super like can happen almost every single call, which is pretty annoying. If you've done any demos, you kind of have had that probably happen to you, okay? Especially when it's not prompted, right? Now, what's the actual difference with speech to speech? So you can actually see that the graph in itself is way less, packed, right? So in this case, what you actually have with Realtime API is that you have a caller that says, I want to book an appointment for tomorrow at 12 p.m., right? Then you have a custom AI voice application. So as of right now, as I'm filming this video on the 11th of November, Sinful and Vappy have not yet integrated Realtime API into their platforms. It's kind of still in beta. We have a little bit of access through it, but it's still in beta. So you do have to create kind of your custom application if you want to use Realtime API right now. Obviously, this does require coding knowledge. So if you're not a software engineer or you don't have any software engineers on your team, then it's virtually impossible or quite tricky at least to do it. But now, when you have the caller, it goes through your AI voice application. It inputs the user audio and then the LLM layer. So OpenAI just answers with audio. So it receives audio, answers with audio, and goes back to the caller, right? So there's no plenty different softwares. There's your single AI voice application. That's it, right? So what this actually does is it eliminates all the other problems. So it's as fast as a human. It keeps the empathy, emotions, and accents and it detects them of the individual since it's analyzing audio now instead of text. There's no reliability issues, or much less, because you're just integrating with OpenAI, which is one of the most reliable AI softwares out there. You don't have any complex billing; it's just OpenAI, and there's no voice interruptions because once again it detects your speech, right? So it can understand that depending on your emotion, your tonality, that you're just taking a break versus it just detecting a dot in a 1 second space and then cutting you off. Right. The only problems with a real-time API, and it's more so things that are caused to the fact that it's insanely new and recent on the market, but is that there's really big limitations in regards to custom voices. So whereas with VAPI, you can kind of find your ideal voice, you can even use your own voice to create your own custom voice of you answering as the AI. That's not yet possible with real-time API. I believe there's 6 voices only available right now by OpenAI, and that's it. Okay, so you can't use any other custom voices, which is pretty annoying. It's obviously way harder to customize because it requires development experience, but this is simply for now. Like, we've actually spoken with Synflow, and I mean, their timelines are always changing, but as of now, within the next 30 days approximately, from what I've been told, there should be some kind of real-time API available within Synflow. I'm not sure about VAPI, but Synflow is currently working on getting real-time API available, in which case it won't be hard to customize, it won't require development experience, and there will be more custom voices available. Okay, so all of the problems that are currently there won't exist within the next 30, 45, maybe 60 days at max. So by 2025, this will be the way to go. Okay, so to answer your question, if you were wondering before clicking on this video, should you stick with these platforms or should you go with real-time API? Well, the answer is kind of both, because you should use real-time API, but you'll probably only be able to use it once it's available on these voice communication platforms. Okay, so hopefully this video gave you a bit more insight into what real-time API actually means for your business. So obviously you don't want to be using any voice communication platforms in the future that do not use real-time API, as you can see this is much more complicated, this is much more efficient. It's really a game changer in the AI voice space. It's going to revolutionize the whole thing, and obviously everyone that isn't using real-time API is going to be kind of left in the dust. So with that being said, feel free to subscribe to the channel as usual if you've gotten any type of value from this video. If you have any other questions about any other updates that you may have saw in the AI industry that we haven't covered yet, comment them down below. And on that note, I'll see you in the next video.